So today we're going to start our first terrain overview video in the new series that I'm starting. Just a real quick recap. The purpose of these videos is not to necessarily show you how to build terrain. There are plenty of other channels out there that can do that. It's really to encourage people to create great boards, to have a board or two that they can bring to the club or host a game at their house with, and show people that it's really not as difficult as you might think to have a good looking board, and that you can use really simple techniques and add over time to go from a very basic table to an advanced table to a god tier table. And you don't have to invest a ton of money in terrain if you don't want to have a really good looking board. So again, just an overview of basic advanced god tier, how I kind of rank my boards is the first is a basic board, and it's a simple mat with simple features. You're not looking at anything crazy on the mat side, no crazy alien worlds, no volcanic worlds. You're really looking at three different mats. You're looking at your snowboard, your desert board, and your grasslands boards or your plains board, right? Advanced, you're going to add different, more exotic boards to those. You're going to have more diversified terrain. You're going to mix it up a bit. You're going to maybe incorporate some advanced building techniques or some interesting pieces that you've picked up from vendors or printed using 3D printers. And then God tiers, where you're going to use those really advanced skills. You're looking at like water effects, lava effects, weird alien vegetation, crazy types of buildings with different effects on those. And more importantly, you're going to start incorporating more narrative into your board, so your board isn't just a place where you fight, but it in and of itself is telling a story. So today's board is a Grasslands board. What I really like about Grasslands boards is they're very simple. Most of us have a lot of experience looking at grass at some point, and so it's easy for us to wrap our heads around it without having to go to a lot of source material. You don't got to do a ton of research. A lot of boards, a lot of pictures from gaming companies have boards on there. We're really familiar with them as battlefields within the real world. And they're also very versatile because a lot of the features that you can build and incorporate into these can transfer over to other ones. And you can really, really build up your collection on a grass board. And if you're only going to own one board, you want it to be a Grasslands board. And you can use it in other game systems too. Very, very, very easy to build and to collect for. So first, to go over this mat that I have, or this board I have, is to look at the mat. The mat that I used for this is a Mats by Mars map. It's a vinyl map. I really like the vinyl mats that they do. There are pros and cons. The pros is they're a little bit cheaper and they're lighter. They make storage and carrying and transport really, really easy. The mouse pad mats are absolutely fantastic. They usually cost about 20% more on average than these vinyl mats that get printed. But what I like about the vinyl mats is they're easy to work with. You don't feel as guilty if you want to cut one up. Like I've taken some and cut them up into smaller pieces to use like area train for, and I would feel terrible cutting up a mouse pad mat. The other thing that's nice about the vinyl mats is their weight. If you are hosting events, they weigh like nothing. You can put like 10 of these into like the mouse pad mat bags that they come that you get with them, and like carry them all, and it'll weigh like half the weight, right? Now the downside to them is if you're playing where you want to use hills and put them underneath the mat, you can't do that with these. They don't lay flat in the same way. And the other thing is that when you unroll them, you have to give them some time to like uncrinkle and unroll, and sometimes use stuff on the side. The other thing is when you roll them up, you want to do a really good job of rolling them up. And don't squish them because it'll put creases in them, and you can get the creases out, but it can be kind of a pain in the butt. But I like Mats by Mars. They do a really great job. The other thing with the Mats by Mars ones is if you were playing Classic or you're playing Hextech Alpha Strike, you can do a Battletech overlay on any of their mats, and they'll put the hexes right on there, which is pretty sweet. And they've got a huge, huge selections of mats for like different game systems, and they'll put markings on them and things like that. I buy tons and tons of mats from Mats by Mars. So if you look at the rest of the map, I've followed just WolfNet recommendations for terrain, which is a pretty good starting point for how many pieces of terrain should I own. If you're not playing WolfNet, that's fine. But the WolfNet recommendation is for 10 pieces of terrain. They range in size from small to large pieces. So in here, just a basic mat, I've got 5 hills and 5 woods. That's all I needed. 5 hills, 5 woods. So a long-term goal for any map is to try to have like 15 to 20 pieces. I know that seems like a lot, but what it does is it makes it so like every game isn't samey, and you can really amp that up really quickly, right? So like in these hills, it's like easy to cut out like a dozen hills of different shapes, and then to cut out, if you look at my trees, I use felt and fleece to show where the area terrain is. I can get that on the cheap, and I can cut out like 10 different shapes, right? So already right there, I can get, I can get up there. I don't have the diversity in terrain, but I can mix the board up and make it have a different feel every time, right? I don't have to just play it with the same 10 pieces. So the long-term goal, like I said, is that. But for woodlands, doing hills um, and woods to start is really, really good. So the hills, they're made out of high density blue foam and pink foam. This stuff is fairly inexpensive at any hardware store. You can get 2x2 sheets or much bigger sheets. I usually get the 2x2. I know it's a little more expensive per square foot, but like if you're running around in a little car, it's a lot more manageable. And really, like, you'll buy like that 4x6 foot sheet for insulating a house, and you'll have more foam than you know what to do with. And where are you going to store it? Like, it just takes up space in your garage or your shed or your house and is a mess. And so I like getting the 2x2 sheets. Like I said, it's a little bit more, but a single 2x2 sheet is like more than enough for a single board. You're probably spending like $8 on it, $10 on it. It's really not that bit, like not that expensive. And you can easily get like 10 to 20 hills depending on like the shape and size you're going for. But 10 to 20 hills, very reasonable out of a 2x2. What I've done over time is I'll go, when I run low on hills, and I'll go buy like 2-3 sheets of that stuff, and I'll just cut them up with a hot knife. You know what? I don't like using a saw or a knife. I like to use a hot knife. You don't have to do any like extra work on it if you don't want to do like texturing and stuff. So these ones, I've just used a hot knife. That's it. Or foam cutter if you have one of those, like a hot foam cutter, like, and you just slice it up. And then, what I've learned when I've used the saw or a knife is you have to come over and like do some texturing or smoothing, because otherwise the cuts are really rough. But this with the hot knife, it's great. And then I just will cut like 3 boards up. I might get like 60 hills. I'll throw them into a tote. And then I have hills ready to go when I build a board or I want to do something different. And I can just go and pick the pieces that I want. It's also super modular because you can like create interesting and weird shapes and like set things up or have stackable hills that make more sense than like at random. Or like if you want to do something weird, you certainly can play around with that with the hot knife. I've then used a mixture of Mod Podge and paint to paint the hills brown. I coat the whole thing brown, and usually I do like 2 coats. What's nice about Mod Podge is when it dries to blue board and foam, if you've done at least 2 coats, I find 2 coats is a really good amount. But if you've done like 2 coats on there, you can spray paint it if you want. Not that big of a deal. Like it really like you're not going to melt the foam. I've had really, really good luck with that. I've never had a problem. But the Mod Podge really seals the foam really well, better than white glue does, and it dries really nicely. And it takes paint really well. It doesn't like alter the color of the paint. The first coat you're going to need to do, the foam will shine through a little bit. So I like to do a second coat. And sometimes I find like the first coat, sometimes I'll use like a gloss Mod Podge. It seems to have a better seal to it than like the matte. Whatever they put in there, you definitely can smell whatever that gloss is when you open it up, but it does a really, really good job. And then I've gone over and just flocked it on top. If you want to just like paint it green, that's totally fine. If you want to use like turf, or you want to use like some sort of ballast, I've done that and used that on there to be a little to give some more texture to it. But this is just simple flocking. I think it's like 2mm like static grass with some turf mixed into it, and maybe a little bit of ballast of some sort. And it's like the most simple way to do it. Like, you can use texture. I've got some boards where I've done some texturing on them, or I've done some interesting things on it. You'll see that when I get to like my volcanic board and my lunar board and a couple other ones. You certainly can do that, but you don't have to. And these look fine. They look totally fine for like a basic board. And then after that, I've got my trees. So I'm just using felt as a base here, the area train, and I can pick these trees up and put them back down. And then I've just bought pre-made trees off of Amazon. Now the conifer trees, the ones that are green that would have leaves, I hope I got that right. I think you can get them like 20 pack. I'll put a link below from Amazon, and it's like way more trees than you'll ever need. I play lots of games where I have lots and lots of terrain on the board, so I like to throw lots of extra trees out there. So I probably bought like 5 or 6 packs of these over time. I probably own well over 100 of these trees, and then I'll base them up. The conifers are on, they're on like a wood base, and then I flocked it just to kind of help it blend in. And then the deciduous trees, the other ones I've done on cardboard, where I've taken hot glue and I've coated the cardboard with hot glue that keeps the cardboard from warping when you put the Mod Podge and the flock down. And then I like to just load up like 80% of the surface area of that area terrain feature of that felt with the trees. I was just like how they look when they're dense, like they look like a real forest. And then you can just pick them up and move them, and then mechs can interact with them if they decide to go into the woods. If not, you got a nice big thick piece of woods there. And so as you see here, I probably have about 20-ish trees on the board, multi-based, and they form like a nice thick piece of vegetation. And there you go. I get them off Amazon. I'll put the links below, like I said, and I've got my 10 pieces of terrain. So if you're looking at next steps, it's really easy on a Grasslands board to take those next steps and go and add a couple extra things in that kind of basic tier. And the first thing I would do is just get the cardboard board houses and buildings, or they're not really houses, but the buildings out of like the Alpha Strike starter set or the Battletech starter strike, whichever one it is. They look pretty good. They're not like 3D printed. They're not like super dynamic, but they work. So you see here, I've got a single building just right in the middle. I've replaced a piece of terrain, and suddenly I got a nice building right in the middle that looks like it quasi belongs, and it provides line of sight blocking terrain. Alternatively, in the WolfNet format, oftentimes they'll get like 3 smaller things like pillars or buildings, and they'll group them together. So you could also take 3 of the smaller buildings from CGL's cardboard building set and group them together, and then you got like a little settlement. And there you go. You've gone from, your 10 pieces of terrain to now you've got 12 pieces of terrain. And if you've got extra hills and forest, you've got even more, right? You could go 3 hills and 6 woods and a building, right? You can mix it up. So in the advanced level, I've added a road here. So road, most settlements, most buildings, most man-made features, human settlements are going to have roads coming and going to them. This road is made out of Hot Wheels road tape, and I'll put links to this again in down below. It's from Amazon. And then 1/16 rubber matting. So I just stick that tape right to the rubber matting and then cut it out. And one of the things I like about that is over time, as you store it and move it, you get little cracks in the tape, and it actually like looks like the road's kind of beat up, and it kind of ages naturally. It's kind of funny that way. I like it. Next is I've swapped out a piece and added a water feature. This is that same 1/16 rubber matting. I've just painted it, and then I've stippled gloss Mod Podge over the top. Now you see here, this is not a blue lake. This is a green lake, because most lakes, especially like if you're from the Midwest, are not blue. They're green because they're full of grossness. But so I've added that in there, stippled it with the gloss Mod Podge, and then I've got a little water feature. And you can make rivers, streams, lakes, big bodies of water with this stuff, and it's relatively inexpensive, and it's super easy to do. Like I said, spray paint it. I spray painted this one green, did a little black spray paint to show some depth. I then stippled some just like brown around the edges to like show where it like might be shallower and you can see some dirt. And then I did a gloss Mod Podge over the top, and I mixed maybe a little green paint to make it look like, the algae blooms or the grossness and like a lot of lakes that you see is there. The other thing you can do, makes real easy, is super easy, especially now that you can just buy them from CGL. But if you got access to a 3D printer, or you're willing to pay for it from someone who 3D prints, is add a dropship. Super iconic, automatically screams Battletech. Boom. It's on the board. God tier. So you'll see here that I've replaced one of the buildings with a small little burger joint that's 3D printed, and the burger is off a Hot Wheels car from one of my kids' collections. They've got more Hot Wheels cars than they know what to do with. And I saw this little burger rolling around on the wheels, and I thought, man, that would look super good on top of one of these Battletech buildings, and it'd be a like nice little burger joint. So suddenly, now this board is telling a story. It's like, oh, it's not just these cardboard buildings out in the out in the plains, out in the forest, but there's a burger joint out here. What I like about this building too is it also kind of acts as a hill, because it's like less than an inch tall, and so you could jump up on it and use it as a hill, but you could hide behind the burger, which is, I think, super funny and interesting. And then you could, narratively, you've got this drop ship next to it, and you can be like, oh, this is galactically famous burger joint, and it's so famous that dropships stop in from time to time, and they cruise there. If these mercenary crews got to get their burger joint on, Culver's in space, as it were. But then maybe you want to take it a next step further, and you've got different drop ships. So I've here got my pirate drop ship, the Rusty Tusty Mina. And maybe they're there to steal the secret recipe. So you've added a little narrative. It's funny, it's fun, it's goofy, but there's a narrative there that can be played. So you can see really quickly how I've gone from 10 pieces of terrain, 5 woods, 5 hills, to adding buildings, roads, and some water features, some drop ships. And now I've got like 15, 20 pieces of terrain that I can play with. I could have both drop ships on there. I could build a small town. I could build a real settlement with the buildings in the burger joint. I could have a lake in there. I could add more trees. I could have more hills. And you can really mix it up. And if you go and price all this out, I bet this board total, because I printed both of these drop ships and the building, and I stole the burger from my kids. I bet the whole board probably cost me less than $30, not including the mat. The mat itself is probably 40, so you get the mat for 40, you put the train on it for 30 or 40, $80. That's less than WolfNet, company 350 list would cost you. And you can use this, your mechs you might use in this game and that game, and you buy more and use them in this game and that game. But this mat you're going to use in every game if you only own one mat. So I think it's totally worth it. If you've got experience or you got ideas for terrain making, or you got something interesting you've done with the Grasslands map, put it in the comments below. Otherwise, I'm gonna be rolling out another one probably in the future. Might move on to a desert board. I have a really cool desert board. It's got lots of features. It really is. It's themed around my pirate list, and I'll go into it in detail there. But there's a lot of really cool stuff I've done with that I'm really excited to show off, especially when it comes to like the advanced god tier level stuff. Otherwise, may the blessings of Blake be upon you.